state of self-realization is considered as belonging to the Dharmata Buddha, who is evidently the Dharmakaya of the later periods. There are other forms of Buddhahood known as Nishyanda Buddha and Nirmala Buddha. Nishyanda literally means flowing down, or flowing into, and the Nishyanda Buddha is a Buddha into whom Dharmata flows and who shines in splendor. The two later Chinese translators have rendered it as pao fo, la meaning, to requite, to compensate, while the sung by Gunabhadra has meaning, to depend, to rely upon. The latter is nearer to the sense of the Sanskrit Nishyanda, and it is hard to know how the later translators came to have pao for it instead of I. Did they try to read their own thought into it? For they were doubtless acquainted in their own day with the doctrine of Trikaya, one of which, generally known as Sambhogakaya, corresponds to Vipakaja, or Vipakastha in the Lankavatara. The other form of the Buddhahood mentioned in the Lankavatara is Nirmika, or Nirmajika, or Nirmana. This is generally done into Chinese by i.e. Transformation Buddha, corresponding to the Nirmapakaya of the triple body. As to what this transformation Buddha is, the sutra does not offer any explanation. But when the distinction is made between the Nirmapa Buddha and the Dharmata Buddha as to their method and material of preaching, we can have a glimpse into the specific features of the Nirmita Buddha. The Lankavatara makes the latter the teacher of the ordinary people known as Bala and Prithigjana in Buddhist literature, while the Dharmata Buddha discusses an inner perception penetrating into the suchness of truth, or the self-absorbing contemplation by supreme wisdom, of the ultimate condition of things which cannot be reached by logical categories. The class of beings designated as Bala and Prithigjana, which includes almost all of us who drift over the ocean of contrary ideas, is not able to see behind the veil of ignorance and wrong judgment, and to lead this unfortunate group of sentient beings to salvation and enlightenment, the Nirmal. A Buddha would discuss the aspects of particularity and generality as objects of the intellect. His preaching is thus concerned with the individualizing side of existence, which is dealt with in Buddhist philosophy under such categories as the 6 paramitas, 5 skandhas, 12 ayatanas, 18 dhehatas, methods of emancipation, modes of consciousness, and other subjects. The object of these discourses is naturally to go beyond the teachings of the various philosophical schools of the day. The Dharmata Buddha, on the other hand, is meant for the bodhisattvas whose aim is to come to the highest realization of truth, which is known as Pratyat Mariyaj Nanagati Gokara in the Lankavatara. The distinction between the Nirmana Buddha and the Nishyanda Buddha is not quite clear as far as the Lankavatara is concerned, for it describes the latter as performing almost the same function as the Nirmana Buddha. His teaching is said to consist of such topics as particularity, generality, habit energy conserved in the deep recesses of consciousness, wrong judgments about it, and their interrelations causing multitudinousness of objects to appear, and then our inordinate attachment to them, but in reality the non-existence of all these phenomena. Of these topics, the Dharmatanashyanda Buddha will speak thus. The conception of an individual ego substance arises from our wrong judgment concerning the nature of existence and the law of causation, both of which fail to apply beyond the world of relativity, which is empty. It is like the creation of the magician. He knows how to produce a variety of unrealities depending upon some objects of the senses, such as plants, brick, etc. The spectators are induced to take them for real objects, though in fact there are none such. To the ordinary mind, the law of causation is made to extend beyond the world of relativity, which is also the world of wrong judgments and attachments. Whereas the world which supplies a subject matter for the Dharmata Buddha is altogether unsupported and disengaged from dependence. That is to say, it is not to be subsumed under such notions as creation, sense perception, inference, and others, as it is not to be found among the contents of thought cherished by ordinary ego-bound minds, in which the Hinayanists and philosophers are included. The Dharmata Buddha points directly to the truth of immediate perception in which the bodhisattva stands alone detached from the hypothetical creations of the mind. This gives us an insight into what the Dharmata Buddha teaches in contradistinction to the two other Buddhas, the Nirmana and the Nishayanda. But as to the distinguishing marks between the latter two, we fail to get any definite and specific ideas. When the universe is divided into two aspects, absolute and relative, the absolute belongs to the Dharmata, while the relative 0ne is the common province of the Nirmana and the Nishayanda. One may ask, why the distinction, then? As far as the Lankavatara goes, this question is not explicitly answered. We can say only this: that the doctrine of Trikaya must have already been in progress at the time of the Lankavatara, and the compiler of the sutra took it for granted that his readers were acquainted with the idea. 1t was evidently some time later that the doctrine came to be dogmatized. The term, Dharmakaya, occurs at several places in this sutra, but no Sambhogakaya, except once in the Sagatharkam, nor Nirmanakaya, perhaps except once on. However, that the Buddha is able if he wills to manifest himself as a Nirmanakaya in response to the earnest desire of his followers or in order to execute his own purposes, is foreshadowed in the conception of Manomayakaya, mind-made body, or will body. This is a kind of Nirmanakaya. One thing I wish to emphasize in this statement concerning the three forms of Buddhahood is that the story of the inmost perception to be gained by the bodhisattvas, forming the central theme of the Lankavatara, is told only by the mule Tathagata, or true Tathagata, as in the Ang version, because he is above all senses, all logical measurements, and cannot be perceived by the Sravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas, nor by the philosophers, because he abides absorbed in the bliss of realization and in the perfection of the highest knowledge. The doctrine of the Lankavatara is thus seen to be the direct revelation of the absolute Buddha as he is. This sketchy and incidental reference to the doctrine of the triple body is far from being satisfactory. Lայն a chapter exclusively devoted to the treatment of the subject of fuller exposition is presented. The highest knowledge and a first cause. We know now that supreme wisdom realized in the inmost depths of consciousness is something absolutely defying all description and altogether unpredicable, and that it is therefore the topic to be properly dealt with by Dharmata Buddha himself and not by any beings subject to the principle of relativity. This knowledge is thus eternal, unconditioned, and beyond the reach of all analysis and discursive understanding, as it belongs to the highest principle of cognition from which all relative knowledge is derivable. Now the question is, in what respect does this differ from the first cause considered by the philosophers to be also eternal and beyond thought? This is answered by the author of the Lankavatara in the following manner. What is claimed to be first cause by the philosophers cannot really be so, because a cause always presupposes something beyond and cannot be its own cause. The idea of causation belongs to a world of relativity, and what is relative cannot be eternal and is always within the sphere of thought. If we take a thing belonging to the relative world and therefore to a realm of action, as a first cause from which everything else has its beginning, this will be a wrong form of inference. For we jump from relativity to transcendentality, from impermanence to eternity, from a thing that is to a thing that is on the other side of being and non-being. Therefore, what is regarded by the philosophers as the first cause eternal and beyond thinkability is not to be identified with supreme wisdom attainable by the Buddhas and bodhisattvas. That the supreme wisdom is eternal and cannot be made a subject of thought, comes from its intrinsic nature. For it is a state of mind realized personally by the Buddhas when they deeply delve into the ultimate principle itself, which is not conditioned by any category of thought. It is not to be designated as a cause which is bound up with its antecedents and consequence. It stands alone, quietly, as absolute knowledge flashed through one's consciousness. It is a fact of experience which does not allow of any arguments. It is tathata, tattva, perceived in the inmost consciousness of the tathagata. As it is not an object externa to him, it is a self-sufficient cause not depending on anything. We may say that this is a state of pure perception. And it is for this reason that the Lankavatara is ever persistent in making this pure perception not an object of discursive understanding for the ordinary minds. For the philosophers, for the Hinayanists, it is not only too exalted a subject for them to comprehend, but quite beyond logic and liable to be wrongly and disastrously interpreted by them. It is meant for those only who are not at all surprised, or alarmed, or frightened at hearing that there is a thing beyond one's power of thinking, for such belong to the family of Tathagatayana. The Mahayanist does not deny the reality of the objective world as regards its relativity, where all conditions obtain. He only refuses to extend these to a realm where they do not apply. And of the existence and reality of such a realm he is firmly convinced because his inner perception testifies to it. What stronger and more intimate and more convincing proof could one ever expect to offer for a truth? Therefore, the Lankavatara boldly declares, Srotapati phala, Sakridagami phala, Anagami phala, and Arhatva. They are all perturbed states of mind. Sometimes I speak of the triple vehicle, sometimes of the one vehicle, and sometimes of no vehicle. All these distinctions are meant for the ignorant, for men of inferior wisdom, or even for the noble-minded. As to the entering into the ultimate truth, it goes beyond dualism. When one is abiding where there are no images, how could the triple vehicle be established? All kinds of jhana, aprama, arapya, samadhi, and the extinction of thoughts, they do not exist where there is mind itself. The parable of the sand of the Ganga. From the absolute point of view, no use is apparently to be found for anything in the world. No talk is needed, no sermoning avails, and therefore, let the world go as it pleases and work out its own salvation if it ever wants. For what are the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas after all? This is then the question awaiting the absolutist's solution. The following passages concerning the parable of the sands of the Ganges will be edifying in this respect. At that time Mahamati asked the Blessed One, Thou teachest in the scriptural text that the tathagatas of the past, present, and future, are like the sands of the Ganga. Is this to be understood literally? Or is there another meaning to it? Explain it to me, O Blessed One. To this the Blessed One answered, O Mahamati, do not understand it literally. The Buddhas of the past, present, and future are not to be measured, according to the measure of the sands of the Ganga. Why? Because the comparison goes beyond this world. It is no fair comparison, there is something resembling in it but not quite exact. And, O Mahamati, The Tathagatas do not hold up a comparison going beyond this world and not of complete resemblance. What has been told by myself and the Tathagatas is no more than a small portion of real resemblance. When I say that there are Tathagatas equal to the sands of the Ganga, it is meant to make those stupid and vulgar people tremble, who, following the modes of feeling and the erroneous views which are cherished by some philosophers, get attached to them, thinking that there is an eternal being or that there is not, go on revolving around the wheel of existence, of birth and death. How are they to be kept away from the straight path of the wheel of existence so that they come to long for a superior object and lay hold of a superior object? Thus it is shown that Buddhahood is easy to attain. If it is told that the appearance of a Tathagata is like the blooming of the Audumbara, they may not exert themselves. Therefore, I preach that the Tathagatas are like the sands of the Ganga. But again, considering what people are to be led, I hold out in the scriptural text that the appearance of the Tathagata is a matter of as great rarity as the blooming of the Audumbara plant. O Mahamati, the Audumbara Phioa has never been seen by anybody, while the Tathagatas have already appeared in the world and are here even now. 2. Say that the appearance of the Tathagata is as rare an event as the blooming of Audumbara plant is not a statement put forward in accordance with my inner knowledge. When a statement is shown in accordance with my inner knowledge, it goes beyond, it oversteps any comparison that may be made in the world, because of its unbelievableness, and it will not be believed by stupid and vulgar people. No comparisons hold good in the realm of the supreme wisdom which is attained by an inner realization, because the truth goes beyond those marks visible to the Citam, Manas, and Manavijñāna. The truth is the Tathagata, therefore no comparisons are adequate here. Nevertheless, O Mahamati, just a little of comparison is given, that is, Tathagatas are said to be equal to the sands of the Ganga. They're equal, they are not different, yet the comparison is not proper, nor erroneous. O Mahamati, for instance, the sands of the river Ganga are violently trampled on by fishes, tortoises, porpoises, crocodiles, buffaloes, lions, elephants, etc. But the sands are not troubled, have no ill feelings, nor are they unconscious of being trampled on. They are without imagination, beautifully clear and devoid of impurities. Even so with the Tathagatas. O Mahamati, their supreme wisdom attained by an inner perception is the great river of Ganga, and their powers, psychic faculties, self-mastery are the sands. And they are trampled by the philosophers, stupid people, and antagonists, who are the fish 8, but they are not troubled, they have no ill feelings. The Tathagatas, because of their original vows, fulfilling all the bliss that accrues from perfect mental concordance, for the sake of all beings, are not troubled, have no ill feelings. Therefore, the Tathagatas, like the sands of the river of Ganga, do not particularize, as they are above likes and dislikes. O Mahamati, the sands of the river of Ganga do not lose their earthly quality even when fire breaks out on earth at the end of the Kalpa, because the sands are of the nature of the earth itself. And, O Mahamati, as the earth is one with fire, it will never consume away, though it is imagined by stupid and vulgar people who are fallen into the way of untruthfulness that the earth will burn up because of continuity. But it will never consume away because it is the element on which fire subsists. Even so, O Mahamati, the Tathagata's Dharma body, like the sands of the Ganga, is not destructible. O Mahamati, as the sands of the river Ganga are immeasurable, even so, O Mahamati, the Tathagata's rays of light are immeasurable, which are shed by the tathagatas over the assemblies and circles of all the Buddhas in order to effect the ripening and inspiring of all beings. O Mahamati, as the sands of the river Ganga, retaining their quality of being themselves, do not change into anything else, even so, O Mahamati, the tathagatas, because of their severance from the cause of conditional existence, have gone beyond the realm of birth and death. O Mahamati, as the sands of the river Ganga are unconcerned whether some of them are taken away or whether more are thrown in. Even so, O Mahamati, the Tathagata's wisdom which is engaged in the ripening of all beings knows neither decrease nor increase, for the Dharma is without corporeality. Beings endowed with the body, O Mahamati, are destructible, not so with beings without the body. And the Dharma is without the body. O Mahamati, as a man cannot obtain ghee or oil or such things from the sands of the river Ganga, however hard he may squeeze them to get it, even so, O Mahamati, the Tathagatas, however painfully hard they may be oppressed for the sake of all beings, never neglect the fulfilling of their original vows which they cherish in the depths of their hearts in the Dharmadhatu realm of the Dharma, so long as all bhayags are not led into nirvana by the Tathagatas, and this is due to the latter, being endowed with great compassion. O Mahamati, as the sands of the river Ganga flow along the banks of its water and not where there is no water, even so, O Mahamati, all the discourses by the Tathagatas on the Buddha Dharma take place in accordance with the stream of nirvana. For this reason the Tathagatas are said to be like sands of the river Ganga. O Mahamati, the sense of transmigration here does not apply to the Tathagatas, O Mahamati. Decay is the sense of transmigration. And, O Mahamati, the ultimate end of birth and death is not to be known. Not being known, how am I to disclose the Dharma in the sense of transmigration? Annihilation is the sense of transmigration. O Mahamati, this is not known to stupid and vulgar people. Mahamati asked, if, O Blessed One, the ultimate end is not knowable, how is it possible for all sentient beings to obtain deliverance as they are living in the midst of birth and death? Said the Blessed One, O Mahamati, when the cause is removed, which is the memory habit energy or vasana or erroneous reasoning and faulty discrimination during beginningless time, and when there takes place a revulsion at the seat of discrimination by realizing that external objects are appearances or manifestations of one's own mind, then there is deliverance, which is not annihilation. Therefore, O Mahamati, there is no occasion for speaking of endlessness. An endless end is a synonym of discrimination, O Mahamati. And apart from discrimination, there is no being whatever present. When the inner world or the outer one is surveyed with wisdom, we find indeed, O Mahamati, all objects transcending the dualism of knowing and being known. Only because of ignorance of the discriminating mind, discrimination takes place. When this is realized, it disappears. On this occasion this was uttered. Those who perceive the Buddhas like the sands of Ganga as unrelated to destruction, or to transmigration, they truly see the Tathagatas. As the sands of Ganga are free from all defects, always flowing along the current, so is the substance of Buddhahood. Part 2. The intellectual content of the Buddhist experience. Having elucidated to a certain extent, though not so exhaustively as a thorough survey of the Lankavatara may require, as regards its general contents and especially the nature of the inmost consciousness of the Tathagata known as Pratyamayanaghakara. Let us now proceed to see what intellectual equipment is needed for a bodhisattva before he can attain to this inner realization so emphatically acclaimed in the sutra. This intellectual equipment, consisting of two parts, logical and psychological, is in a way the philosophical content of the intuitive experience attained by the bodhisattva. It may be regarded either as the intellectual attitude to be acquired by him before he enters upon the path of Buddhist discipline, or as the philosophy of what he has realized, which as a rational being he is to elaborate later on. In either case, the Lankavatara offers us a thoroughgoing idealism along with the message of self-realization. And this has been the point of discussion as referred to before among the Buddhist exegetists, who wished to decide which was the more important topic of the sutra. Whatever this may be, we are now prepared to see what is the philosophical background of the Buddhist experience.